All right. Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I'm your host, Pete Bickford. Obviously, we have a little bit of graphic package switching that still needs to be configured, but we're getting the hang of it out here. Anyway, another nearly perfect launch to another perfect show. Hope you guys can all hear us okay. We're still learning our way around StreamYard, but we're getting better. Anyway, welcome. For the next hour or so, we're going to be trying to take as many of your questions as we possibly can about all things comics and comic-based related. I guess if you have odd romantic questions, you can throw those in too, just to mix things up. But yeah, we're here to help you use get the most out of using ComicBase. Thank you to all the folks who sent in questions ahead of time, and I'm going to head off our moderator who's in the house right now and say, don't forget there is a dedicated forum thread for submitting questions and ideas for the show. Feel free to check that out, and make sure you make your thoughts known. If you have a question during the show, please post it to the chat to @ComicBaseTV. That helps stand out a little bit, so I know that it's meant for us to try to get around to, and not just you guys talking amongst yourselves. And with that said, I think we'll start to start away with things. Anyway, Andre, first in the house here. Welcome. Richard Scott, Mike Wagner. Nice to see everyone again. Oro. And also Robbie as well. Let's see here. Ed Elliott. Oh God, I knew I was going to miss your name. I'm sorry about that. And other Ed, Doug Wren. Nice. Let's see. I think you got the first question here. I'll mark yours in as to be handled. Get that one soon. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Or also reminds everyone, please hit the like and subscribe buttons on the YouTube screen there. If this is the sort of thing that you like, then we would like to do more of this sort of thing. So please hit the like and subscribe, because it does get the messages out to people who are on the subscription list. It's particularly important in the first couple of minutes of the show. So thanks again. So I'm going to hold off on comic-based news because there's actually a lot of it, but we're in that weird area right now where everything on building the next big bad thing is it's still it's sixes and sevens, as the Brits would say. So I don't want to share too much of it right now. It's going to be a little bit quiet on the comic-based tweaking front. I will say we did put out a couple of little mods to ComicBase 2022 recently. If you have been getting any kind of errors when you are compressing your database, just saying things like arithmetic overflow or anything like that, it's because the database, we've added so much stuff to it recently that depending on when it's been compacted or not, or whether Sidekick got to it first, you might have temporarily gotten a little overflow message. It goes away if you would just hit continue, but even better yet is just download the most recent version, and that also makes it go away because we fixed it. But we have crossed over the threshold in terms of like how much data is in ComicBase that would have frankly thrown the old version of ComicBase before we did ComicBase 2022 and redid the entire database. If we were still using the old database technology, we'd be dead in the water. We literally would be like, no mas, that's it. That's all the data you can have. But no, thanks to the wonders of SQLite, which ComicBase 2022 is built on, I think the maximal database size it's certainly it's well above petabytes, but it's not any amount of storage that I'm likely to have in my lifetime ever. Although I think if I was the Google data center, maybe they've got that kind of storage laying around, but it won't be a problem for us. All right. Other than that, though, yes, there are a couple of little tweaks. If you've been having any kind of little glitchy bits with ComicBase, by all means, check out the support section, and you can see all the differences there in the interim versions of ComicBase by checking out the interim updates page. And you can download that, as always, from the under my account. Just go to registrations. Whenever you download the software, you always get the most recent version of it. So before you have to call tech support for anything in particular, always check there first and see if we've already fixed your problem. So hopefully we have, if that's an issue. All right, let's see here. Hey Jerry, great to see you. And Jet City Comics as well. Thomas B, excellent. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna take Doug first because I think he hit it first. At some point, I really wish there might even be a way to do this, to sort of bucket out questions, as far as the order you want to take them. If your question floods past me and I didn't catch it in time, please feel free to ask it again. I'm not trying to blow anyone off. And by the way, also apologies to anyone who, when I was trying to do the interview show last week, apparently I got into the discussion with Joel Meadows so much that I forgot to keep glancing back at the chat nervously, and there were questions you guys wanted to ask him. So I'm just going to have him on another time and hit some more of your questions on that one. Not trying to blow you guys off. I'm just trying to dance as fast as I can here, and sometimes things get past me. All right, but Doug, let's go with you first. All right, let's see here. Let's see. It says, I've noticed that when I submit new or corrected data, specifically creator credits, some of the data is lost on the next update. The fields that were added are again blank. What's up? Interesting question. That is probably one where if that happens to you, probably send a follow-up note to support@comicbase.com, because that'll go straight to the editorial staff. Typically, when the rules of corrections are when there's only there's some fields that are set as so. For instance, okay. Forming thoughts. It's hard. Yes, there are fields such as notes where your information always gets added to our information. They stack, as they were. There's other things where if you had blank information before, so let's say you'd put in the inker for a certain issue and we didn't have the inker, we're pretty much always going to take your inker because there was nothing there before. There's nothing to challenge it, even if we feel like you're not necessarily the most trustworthy guy in the whole thing. We generally will take data over no data unless you're just really sketch. There are a couple of fields, though, where they're a little bit more contentious. Well, one of the prime ones is the item description, where when we're talking about what are the features which determine whether something is the A variant or the B variant or the C variant, there, our editors are going to give it a very hard, long look, and if your data differs materially from ours, we're probably going to reject it out of hand, because the one thing we never want to do is wind up, saying, look, the gold foil logo edition was the B variant. If you come back and say, no, the gold foil logo edition was the C variant, if we accept that change after we published it, messes everyone up. So that's one where we would typically, just reject the data. But it's rare that you'd submit something and once you download stuff, you'd get back nothing. So I would say send a follow-up note with the specific examples on that one to our editors. I could think of a couple cases where that might be the proper thing that's going on, but they elude me a little bit. So yeah, it's best if you can just send a note with the particular comic book that you're talking about, what you submitted, and what and ask, hey, why did you not take that? And hopefully they can give you a good answer. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. Ed Billiot says, general question, when does data in ComicBase, when I enter data in ComicBase, when should you use a comma and when to use a semicomma? So I assume you mean semicolon. Great question. And let's flip over to the screen and we'll give it a good example of that. Let's pull something that's got some data in. Let's go to, say, the Sandman. All right, so come on, wake up, hard drive. All right, and let's move this onto the right computer. All right, so let's go say the Sandman. All right. So let's go there. Sorry, my computer's struggling under the video load just a little bit here. Okay, so you will see if there's a couple fields here. Let's have a look at, say, the notes field over here. This one says reprints the Sandman #1. It's a flip book. It's by Vertigo, and it's it's the ensemble reprint. Right. All these guys in the notes on this one. Maybe here. I think we can zoom in. Really? You're not magnifying? All right, hang on. Let's see if I can get my magnifier working again here. Let's try this again. There we go. All right. So because notes and storylines and certain things like this, because they could naturally have commas in them. So, for instance, you see the storyline Master of Dreams Part 3. If I scroll down, maybe you can. This is very strange because I'm looking at one screen to do what I want and another screen to figure out how it's getting reflected on the program view. And let's see if I can nudge it over. There we go. Okay. Wow, I had it. Okay. All right. So this is very strange. All right. So say storylines, Master of Dreams, comma, Part 3, semicolon, dream a little dream of me is the name of that particular storyline. You got to use semicolons there because commas could naturally be part of the data. Same thing goes with notes. You might say something like, this is the May 1st, 2023 deluxe edition, right? If so, the individual notes are going to get separated by semicolons and not by commas, because the comma could be part of a particular note. Otherwise, though, if you're talking about something like an artist name, writer name, anything like that, those are all going to be separated by commas. But the nice thing about all
Colorist
that,
row 3, not sorted.
wow, that's kind of neat. I apparently activated some kind of spoken text feature, so that's a new one for this one. But anyway, so that the notes, the storylines, the item descriptions are all semicolon separated. And also, if you just try to put a return in them, I believe they will automatically turn those into semicolons if you try in those fields. And then the other thing is, if you go to any of the artist fields and you accidentally start trying to type semicolons between artist names, I believe it automatically changes those to commas because it knows that that's a wrong thing. So that's kind of the long and the short of that one. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. All right, let's see here. Let's see. Having Joel back as guest would be great. Okay. Oh, great. So yes. That's okay. Great. And let's see. And Richard says my feed was stuttering in Oregon. Well, I'm sorry. One thing that's actually kind of cool these days is you should be able to pick us up on Facebook Live if that's your thing as well. So let's see how that goes. All right, let's see here. ComicBase TV. Got my wireless barcode scanner, and the paperwork mentions it's Bluetooth. Is it really? Is it really want to show how to get it working? It should not be Bluetooth. If you were staring at the outside box, there's a checkbox to say whether this is a Bluetooth one. That should have been unchecked. But if they checked it anyway, then they gave you a slightly better scanner than the one that we actually contracted for. No, they work with a 2.4 gigahertz wireless dongle. That's that little thing you stick in a USB. Little USB port on your computer, and then it interfaces with the scanner. As soon as you pour this, it communicates wirelessly to the dongle and transmits your data. Bluetooth would be kind of cool, but the only application I could see for that is if I wanted to scan things into a phone. And we don't really have a great application for that, so that's why we didn't blow the extra $5 each per scanner to get that feature built in. But if there's someplace on our paperwork where it said Bluetooth, let us know, because that would be a typo. But no, it's meant to be it's a 2.4 gigahertz wireless signal. All right, let's see here. Jump B, ComicBase TV. All right, let's see what we got here from Oro. Sorry, I was... Slight story, more than you need to know about me. This weekend I was at a Nashville kind of a vintage vinyl and flea market, whatever, fest, and there was a guy there who had a bunch of like old Signet paperbacks, mass market paperbacks from the 50s and 60s. And so it was all this great science fiction and crazy stuff like that. And I picked up the third Mickey Spillane Mike Hammer book, which I'd known who Mike Hammer was. I'd never read him before. He's basically your absolute epitome of the hard-boiled detective. And I'm reading this thing, and it was wonderful. I mean, to think that this thing went for $0.25 back in 1957, the same time when you could have bought, a modern comic book at the time, it would have been kind of a atomic age, little post golden age comic book for $0.10. I'm like, what a great time to be reading print material. But anyway, the one thing about mass market paperbacks at the time is they were $0.25 because they were printed as cheaply as you possibly could have ever printed them. And one way they did that is they made the type really small. So the entire Mike Hammer novel was 142 pages, but each one of those pages was kind of like the equivalent of an 8.5 by 11 typewritten page at the time. That's kind of how the reduction went in. These days they print books much larger, but it's like just taking the font size down 3 points. By the end of the evening, it's like I was reading this till about 1 a.m. and my eyes were just shot. So anyway, that's like I say, more personal info that you need to know about me that explains why I'm squinting so much today. All right. So Oro asks, a quick review of batch entering items, please. Scanned in a few boxes, couldn't figure out what to do to get the list that takes me to each individual book to enter cost data, etc. Okay, sure. Let's do that. All right. Step one, let's get a bunch of comic books. So we can do this. You guys probably remember, this is just part of the grand stash of free comic day books that we keep in there, which, by the way, if, little commercial for my own store on Atomic Avenue, because we order so many free comic book day things ahead of time. Whenever you're ordering something from me on Atomic Avenue, the way it goes is if it's one or two comic books, it's going to get shipped first class in an individual mailer. But as soon as you get into like box levels of stuff, it costs the same to mail 2 pounds of stuff as it does to mail 1 pound and 1 ounce of stuff. It goes up to the next pound. So what happens is whenever you order from me these days is I will load up your box with as many free comic book day things as makes it so I don't need to pay additional postage. So that's why I have those around. So let's go ahead and enter some comics and we'll run through some of this. All right. So switching over here. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go hit Control-I. That's the batch add by barcode command. You can also find that under the, I believe, the items menu, add by barcode right here. All right. So what I'm going to do, let me see. Am I? Is this? No, I don't think the keys are set up right to do the picture-in-picture. Nope, I knew it. Yeah. You win some, you lose some on these new switchers. But anyway, no picture-in-picture today, guys. All right, but what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to flip back and I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to grab comics off the top here, and I'm just going to be scanning the barcodes in quickly as I can. So let's do a few of them here. Fire up the barcode scanner. Which, by the way, if we got one tech call in earlier this week. A person saying, "Well, hey, I'm entering all these new free comic book day things in, and different questions about how to do this, that, and the other thing." And on one hand, it's like you want to answer the questions and help them out, but then there's the awkward moment where you have to say, "Yeah, and by the way, all those are already in there." So free comic book day things in particular always have really strange names. So always, if you can, whenever you can't find a comic in the database ahead of time, real good idea to look for it by its barcode, because I just scanned 5 things at random. This is Rema Chronicles, the Free Comic Book Day 2022, Street Fighter Masters Blanca #1, which was a one-shot that they did just for Free Comic Book Day. There's Free Comic Book Day from Marvel 2022B, because there was 2021A and B, 2022, and presumably next year 2023, and so forth. But I mean, the naming is all over the darn map, and it's completely at the mercy of what the publishers do on this one. It winds up being very very ad hoc. So you don't beat yourself up if you can't find them right away, but always let the barcode do the work for you if you possibly can, because that helps. All right, so or to your point, so I just scanned in 5 things here. And what I'm going to do here, the key numbers over here, is make sure you've checked off display items after saving. Now, also for me, because I always put dividers together for every new title, I always also say, print divider labels for new titles. I'm going to turn that one off for now, because these are already in my collection. I don't need them. And honestly, printing divider labels is going to really slow up the demo. So let's go ahead and do this. All right, so it's going to go ahead and add these guys to my database. All right, and then it brings back the list. Here's everything that I just added. And all right, so I think
I row 1.
Wow, that is so strange. Okay, so so I think the art of zooming in here is if I've got my mouse centered up before I try to zoom in, and I don't try to pan too much, then it'll still stay on the program list. Anyway, but that's everything I've got here. Everything I just added. What I typically do at this point for myself, certainly, is I highlight everything in the list. I also could have just hit Control-A to select all. And then I always go and print ID labels for everything on here. So that's F6 if you like memorizing these things. But what that does is it's going to give me, I'll burn 5 labels just to show this. It's going to fire off my label printer, and it's going to give me something that's going to let me very easily label these guys, so that when after they've been filed, I don't have to wonder forever what these things were called. They'll actually be filed in the right place, and easy to retrieve. In what we found with just our own time tests of, because we have to pay people to file things, we found out that even though it takes an extra minute or two to stick labels on things, the time to even file them is so much faster than having them stare at these things and wonder, well, where does this one go? That wasting the penny on the label. And let's see if it can I get it to focus. No, I cannot. The penny on the label and just the second it takes to slap one of these ID labels on a comic book, it pays for itself many times over in terms of the ability to get to the comic books fast. So anything that goes in my collection always comes in with a file with a title ID label. Now, you might have other needs. For instance, you might have decided, hey, look, I want to mark that everything I've just put in here goes in box 1, or everything that I've just marked in here has a cost of 25 cents. In which case you would use the same kind of idea. You would just highlight the items in the list that you want. In this case, you would do quick change. Let's do it under the menu here. So it's Control G if you want to be all professional on everything, or just go into the edit menu and say quick change. And at that point, then you can say, all right, for all those 5 you got, what do you want to say? So you can say things like, okay, I'm going to say the cost of all these guys, which is up here. Let's say I got them for $0.25 each. Do that. And then you also could do it again and say, all right, so also for all those guys, I want to say that I'm keeping them all in, and you could use your custom fields here. I could have made my custom field number 1 be my box number, for instance. And I'm going to say something like, these are all going to be in box 23. Make the change, boom, done and done. So that's kind of how we use the add by barcode in conjunction with showing the list of what you just added, to be able to add even more information as you go. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, and if there's more you want to see, please let me know. All right, let's see here. It looks like I love that you guys are answering the questions for each other faster than I can possibly get to them. The box has no checkbox for Bluetooth, so okay, yeah. Okay, so let's see here. All right, I think I've caught the end of the posted questions, so I'm going to move on to the ones that people sent me in ahead of time. One of them, by the way, is a pretty good segue. The guy asked, I don't see my box number, how do I make it show up? Which had to do with 2 different elements, both of which are a little bit related to what I was just showing here. So if you've got ComicBase Pro or Archive Edition, you've got access to some more fields than other people do. So if you go under Setup, you go to Custom Fields, you can actually say you've got a number of things you can use for whatever you want them to be. You've got some ones that relate to the title as a whole, and you got a bunch of other ones that relate to just the issues, the items in the title. So a very popular one is for people to say things like, what storage unit or what box do I keep something in? So what you would do is you just take, say, custom field number 1, just call it box. And you also have checkbox fields. Checkbox fields are good for saying yes or no to something. Let's say, I don't know, let's say autograph, and maybe this is one that I want to sell at a convention or something. Or let's say, what's something more interesting about this one? I don't know. Let's say get it signed. Whatever you want. And then other things you can do, there are date fields down here. So if you wanted to do things like saying, what date did I buy it? Or how long has it been my collection? Whatever you want. But basically, we don't know what these fields are meant to be for. We figure that's something that you can, you're probably the best judge of. So, it gives you a way to extend the program with some new capabilities that wouldn't have otherwise. So one thing I've done here is I've gone on the item level. I've said, all right, custom field 1 out. Let's just call that my box. All right. So now when I come back here, I close this window. Let's go over now to under setup and go to columns to view. And let me swing this one over to the right screen. All right. So when you first get ComicBase, it comes set up with like the fields that we think are, I'm sorry, I went to grading setup. Ignore that. Let me go to the right one here, guys. Columns to view. I missed my target by one menu item. So when you get this thing, we have it set, there's a kind of a standard set of fields that we think are kind of useful for most people. There's standard with custom fields, and there's data entry where you really want to kind of show most of the fields. But, there are so many things that we track about any, any item in the database. You probably don't want to have every single thing showing. And if you did have things showing, maybe some are more importantly to you than they are to us. Maybe you want to move them so they're further to the left, or they're next to each other or something. So that's what this columns to view thing is for. And you can set different views for comics, for books, and for magazines. So maybe there are things that are important for you about books that aren't important for magazines, so forth. So you can set them up to just be however you like things. So let's go back to that box field. Now, you might have noticed beforehand I had a custom field 1, and that has suddenly become box number because I gave it a name beforehand. Well, let's just say I want to show that. I'm going to make that visible. So I'm going to click on that. And let's also say I want to, where did I put, you know what, that'll do for, here's the autographed and the get it signed. Let's go ahead and make these visible as well. All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take Box, and let's say Box is super important to me. I'm going to move him way up in the list. And you'll notice after a while as I move this, you'll start seeing him edge his way onto my screen here as I go. And there it is, appearing over there. Let's say that one is so important to me that I want to put it right next to where the price is. All right. It's not quite that important. All right. So what you can do here, and I'd gone after I entered these things. Remember, I'd said set my custom field 1 to be box 23. You can go ahead, add any number of items to your inventory as you want. So I will typically in a regular week, I'll come in, I'll take the week's comic books, I'll go bleep, 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 enter them all in. And at that point, if you want to, you could just highlight, select all. All right, those ones up, box 23 is full, put in box 24, select all, quick change, set box number 24, hit go, boom, done. And you burn through the whole thing very quickly. So, so to answer the guy's original question, I don't see the box number. Where is it? First of all, in his case, the box number was way off to the right of the screen. So, the thing you want to do for that one is you want to go ahead and use the custom, use the columns to view up here to put things in the order you want to see them. I mean, we'll take a guess at things, but, put things the way you like them. And honestly, if there are fields that you see like UPC or something like that just are not interesting to you, lose them. Just uncheck the visible and use that screen space for something that's better for you. By the way, another thing you can do with this one is you don't need to give all the space in the world, every one of these fields. Like for instance, box number is going to be pretty narrow. You maybe want to shorten that one up. Maybe your cost is never going to be more than 5 digits. God help, and so forth. So you don't need to use all that space, and so you can go ahead and grab by the middle here, and you can resize these fields, and they'll remember how wide they were next time you open the program, and you can use them to say, for instance, make your notes more expansive. You can drag it over to the right and make that so you've got a little more room to do your data entries you want. So anyway, that's I think what I wanted to say about that. So let me go and check the chat, see how we're doing. All right. Dazinger, of course, Steve has already answered everyone's question, so we'll just keep on moving on. All right. Okay, and I talked about there was a question that I got earlier on from a person saying I'm and lovely part is he asked me this in I believe Swiss French, I believe. He was getting an error message saying that there was a overflow du arithmetic when he was optimizing, and that was what I was referring to at the top of the show, saying, yes, if you have an extraordinarily large database, which is not super uncommon after all the data we've been adding lately and hasn't been optimized by Sidekick in a while, you might have gotten that message saying there was an arithmetical overflow. It is solved in the latest builds. Just go ahead and just download the latest build of the program, and that will go away. So that's what I wanted to say about that. All right. Oro says, let's see. Any update on entering writer pseudonym policy, please? Nothing critical, just curious. I'm going to bring that one up at the next staff. Sorry, it lapsed my memory. I really wanted to, and we didn't get to it because we were talking about other stuff. So I will come back to you on that one, and beat me up if I don't. I'm sorry about that one. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I think that, all right. So if it doesn't say ComicBase TV, I'm assuming it's just a comment on life, not necessarily for me. All right, next question. This is a bit of a classic, but we'll show it anyway. How do I add a graphic to my ComicBase? So the question was, I believe it was from a Express user that wanted to put in their own custom pictures for something. Let me go ahead and show how that works, and just give me a second to set this one up, and we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so, all right, let's go back over to, all right. So let's say we got a new title. It's called The Wind in the Willows, and it's got no pictures for things. But there are issues 1, 2, 3, 4. You, being a clever and creative person, have either gotten your own copy of these things, scanned them in, or you've located a copy online someplace and saved the JPEG. We don't mind. It's a bit of work, but what the heck? All right. So the trick is, if you want to add your own picture to anything, is basically just take the file in question. If it's the picture for issue number 1, have your picture be called 1 or 1.jpg, depending on whether or not your computer's set to show or hide the file extensions. I always set my computers, by the way, to never hide the file extensions. The file extension is the thing that comes after the dot, in the file name. So like .jpg means it's a JPEG. It's a Joint Photographic Experts Group encoded bitmap is what that actually stands for. There are other file types like waves and pings and TIFFs, and at this point I'm probably just dating myself for ancient graphic standards, but all, docx. .docx is a new style Word document. .doc is an old style Word document. One thing about just computers in general is I always prefer to see the reality of what the file name is. Windows tries to make things nice and friendly. Basically, they're trying to copy the Mac on this one, where they have by default your computer's probably set up to hide known file extensions. So you could have a file name that just says like letter to mom, and it's got an icon of a Word document on it. You're supposed to know that, oh, okay, I recognize that. It's just called letter to mom. And if you looked at its properties, you would see that its full name really was letter to mom.docx. The truth of the matter, though, is a lot of times people, they double things up. They don't, or sometimes you can even have bad guys who try to trick you into clicking on something they shouldn't be clicking on, because they'll call it something, something harmless sounding, but it really isn't. So, an egregious answer for this one, for instance, is a .exe file it's called an executable. It's a program, right? So it does something on your computer. So let's say I took letter to mom and I called it .docx. I could just, if I wasn't thinking very clearly, I might think, oh, it's letter to mom, it's a Word document, double click, right? But it might really be letter to mom .docw.exe. So when I click on it, it's actually going to run a program. That's terrifying to me. I don't want things to do things that I didn't expect them to do. So I always set my computer in the folder preferences. I always set it to always show the file extension, is what that comes for. Anyway, long digression, but there you have it. Anyway, so if you want to take a picture and associate it with a thing, just say, hey, look, this is for issue number 1, 1.jpg, drag it over, and boom, there you go. It's good to go. If I click on it, you see it full size. A couple of minor points to this one. All right, let's say that this one was, let's say it was 1A instead of 1, so 1/A instead of 1. Well, the problem is, matter of fact, let's go to a title that has that so I can actually give a better demo of that sort of thing. There are certain, okay, here you go. So here is 1/HC. It's the hardcover version of Wind in the Willows. You see that down there? Okay. Well, the problem is I can't call the graphic for this 1/HC because slash is illegal in a Windows file name. You can't have slashes because Windows uses slashes to denote a path name. It's part of the folder structure. So the way you say, if you have something that's a variant, a 1A, a 1/HC, etc., just change the slash to a dash. So make this one 1-HC, drag it over, and then that becomes the picture for that guy. If you ever did try to put a slash in the file name, Windows would just flag you down and say, yeah, you can't. It's an illegal character. All right. Another thing, just to show off a little bit, if you want to be super cool about all this stuff, if you hold down the Shift key when you drag stuff in, it'll actually move the file. You'll see that it went away there, so it didn't stick where it was. And I believe, so if you hold down the Control key, let me see if I remember this one right. Yes, if you hold down the Control key, and unfortunately did it on my other monitor, it will actually prompt you to say, what name would you like to give this file? So if you have a bunch of files that aren't named quite right and you want to handle the renaming process at the same time you're dragging them in, yeah, that is so annoying. The problem is it's prompting me to open Photoshop right now. But anyway, but what you can do there is hold down the Control key, and it'll give you a little thing where you can change the name of it as you go, and then drag it in at the same time. So that might save you a couple minutes. And let's see, I think, was there one more? Was Alt? Oh no, I'm sorry, I had that backwards, guys. Alt key or Option key if you have a Mac keyboard. This one will let you rename it on the fly. Control will actually let you edit it as you go. So if you noticed that you want to give it a new name and you want to also touch up the weird little splotches on the cover or something, that will launch Photoshop and let you do that. So Shift to move it, give it a new name at the time, Control to edit it, and yes, you can put all these things together. So if you want to move it, edit it, and also rename it, hold down Control, Shift, Alt, and it'll do all three. All right, so that's way more than you ever want to know about that. I try to be thorough on these things, so there you go. All right, let's see how we're doing. Let's see here, Conte's TV. He says, because you can't use the slash key in Windows, why not change CB to use only dash? Well, we do. So whenever you had a slash whenever there's a slash in the file, the name of the item, you use a dash when you're naming the file name. Now, if the question you're really asking me is why don't we use dash for the variant? And that is because we use dash to indicate the printing. So this is the second printing of Windmaker Birth of a King one-shot. And if I double-click on it, you'll see that's printing number 2 over here. So that's what we use in an item number. If you want to have the worst conceivable item number, it would be something like, let's say it's the, the King Size Special number 1 variation bronze second printing. If I go ahead and do that one, this is the item code it will conk out for that one. Oh, and we have a comment from the moderator here. Yes, I'm sorry about that. We were just talking before the show that that it's very important to, it would be great if we had someone who could actually switch the camera angles when I'm getting distracted and I forget to do it. But luckily we have a moderator who at least can wave me down and say, hey, dude, pay attention. Thank you for that. Anyway, so just to show that one, if you were to take something and give it a special comic type, it has its own number, give it a variant, and give it a printing number. So this is a second printing of the King Size Special bronze variant. It's going to put all that together to make the item number, which then becomes KS-1/BR-2. So because you can have the dash is already spoken for, that's why we don't use it for the item number, because otherwise it'd be the BR printing, and we have to do that. But one thing about that is when you're making the picture, we don't need to worry. We can reverse the logic out well enough to figure out which one you meant it to be at. So if you looked at the picture of this one, you'd call it KS-1-BR-2.jpg. That part's fine. But as far as what we'd actually call the item, yeah, we do have to use both slashes and dashes just because I think there's 4 different parts to an item number. So that's how we separate all those out. All right, moving on. Let's see. And let me go back to the main chat. All right. Yeah. Okay. So, yes, and thank you very much to the mod for helping out on this one. All right. I think we got time for a couple more. All right. We got another one here from John. Let's see here. Notice that if you done an update using Sidekick, it would update again if you did update. It would update again if you did update right after another, while update of ComicBase knows what you've updated already. I'm not sure that's accurate. So Sidekick is a companion program that comes with ComicBase. It basically, it's there to do the boring stuff for you. And Sidekick, because it's meant to run when ComicBase is not running, does a couple of things that actually ComicBase can't do, just due to, ComicBase is always meant to use one database at a time and do things like that. So Sidekick will do a couple of things ComicBase can't do. One is it can back itself up to the cloud, and the other one is it can work with multiple databases at once. Or at least in sequential sequence to each other. So let me see if I can pop that up just to show what the heck I'm talking about. I'm coming around to the point, at least I hope I am. Okay, so I go ahead and open up Sidekick here, put it on the other monitor so we can see it. Okay. And one thing you'll also see is that you'll get this big warning here if ComicBase is already open saying, hey, I can't do a bunch of my stuff if ComicBase is open. The only thing it can do if ComicBase is already open is post check for new sales and purchases, I believe. But the other things like running updates and such, it can post items for sale on Atomic Avenue, but everything else that might possibly involve updating the database from 2 different places at the same time, it can't do that. It has to have ComicBase closed. But one thing Sidekick can do, on the other hand, is you notice it keeps a list of all your different databases. When you pull Sidekick up from the menu down there by your clock, you can actually tell it, say, right-click on that one, and if you have more than one database, update all my databases. Just go to each of them in turn and just do them all. So you can even say, do all the things you do to all the databases. Post the things to update your my inventory on Atomic Avenue, compact the database, back them up to the cloud. You can say, just grind, just do it all at once. As long as you don't open ComicBase in the middle of that, everything will go just great. So that said, the way that they do their updates is basically identical. So in other words, if I've updated Pete's database from within ComicBase, so if I go up here under Internet and I say check for updates, and it says there either is or isn't an update, and go. Let's see what it says. Okay, so yeah, so this database has already been updated. But if it said, yeah, there's an update, you want to update it, boom, go. What it's going to do is it's going to download the big updater file. It's going to figure out everything that's different, and then it's going to only change the things that were different and do stuff like that. If I then go to Sidekick, and with a database that's already been updated, well, first of all, it'll say, you sure you want to do that? Because it's already been updated. But if you did say, you want to update it, so you can always force an update by holding down the Shift key and saying update now. It's going to download a big updater file with all the changes. It's going to, load up everything into ComicBase, so it can compare, what you've got and what they've got against each other. It's going to go through all these motions of doing the whole thing, and in the end, it will change basically nothing because it'll figure out that all the work's already been done. But there's actually a fair amount of loading work it has to do just to figure out that all the work's been done, which is why it also keeps a timestamp of the last time it's been updated and the last update version that it's been updated to. So if it says, update number 1783 for this database has already been put in place, don't bother. You already got it. But if you're seeing anything that's weird in that or something like that, give us a call. But that's, I think it's probably fooling a little bit, because even if there is nothing to change, there's a lot of loading it takes to figure out there's nothing to change. And if you do force it to update from one and they force it to update from the other, you'll see both will happen at the same time. By the way, one of the small things that we got right in the last couple weeks of tweaking is it used to be that Sidekick would only tell you the last time it had updated the database or last time it had done something on the work. We've harmonized the displays in Sidekick more, so that now if it says something like content last updated on 5/20/2022, it used to be that was the last time Sidekick updated the database. So if you'd done it from within ComicBase instead, it would have had an older date. Now we actually, the display that you'll get there is more indicative of the last time the database was updated by anybody. So that's something we got right in recent days. So hopefully that helps some. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Okay, I think I'm gonna take one more, and then my voice is going, so I'm gonna probably pack it in after that. Let's see. Do we want to talk about grades in order, or do we want to talk about third-party barcode scanners? We beat barcode scanners up enough lately. Let's talk about grades being in order. All right, so you guys might have noticed comic grading can get very, very involved. So, for instance, if I come up under here and I want to say what grade a particular comic book is in, once upon a time you had like 7 grades to worry about. We split a couple on these ones here, so maybe you got 10 or 11 now. But this used to be like the Overstreet 7 was the end of the story. Then in the 90s, the Comics Guarantee Corporation came around and added their own slabbed grades in, and then everyone got, then they started having restored grades, and other companies came in and so forth. And this whole thing got to be very, very complex, right? So now if you were to load up everything in there, this drop down goes on, seems like darn near forever. All right. In addition to that, you also, from time immemorial, you can always make your own grades in ComicBase. You can say, well, I like having half grades. I want to say this is a VG plus. Sometimes people say this is a VG plus plus, or it's a VF minus minus. We don't officially do this in ComicBase because we feel like life is short and we're too old for this kind of stuff. But if that's what you want to do, hey, it's it's your program at this point. I mean, you please do what you like. So you can create your own grades as you go. Well, one thing we did a while back, though, is we said, look, let's try to keep the noise level down a little bit here. And we came up with this concept of grading sets. So what that does is it lets you say, hey, look, what grades do you even want to see? And so you can go and choose the grades that are interesting to you, and uncheck the ones that aren't, and take it from there. Well, one nice little thing about grading sets is that if it's in a set, we also like if you were to go and create your own grade, let's say you want to have VF minus minus, right? We're going to say that, all right, this looks like it's one of your custom grades, right? So we're going to try to make your grade that you put in sort in with the rest of kind of like the standard Overstreet grades, and we also sort it by what percentage of near min it is. So if you want to have a VF minus grade, we're going to try to make sure that it appears somewhere between these two. But the way we're doing that is we're assuming it's one of your custom grades, and we're going to then secondarily sort it by what percentage of near min it is. If you had gone out earlier and you'd added your own custom slab type grades, so let's say before we came along with this grading sets, or we had done things like that, there was one, for instance, that came in recently. I believe it was an outfit called EGS or something. If you had added those in yourself, they'd be up here somewhere. They wouldn't be sorted near other EGS grades. They'd be all kind of mixed in with the standard E grades up here, because we don't know kind of like what grouping to put them into. It's a new grouping you created. We didn't know what that is. Well, one thing when we started putting these grading sets together is you got the ability suddenly to say, hey, okay, go ahead and fill out my CGC grades. I only put in the 2 CGC grades I actually had, and they're wandering up here. But if you go ahead and add the grading set version of the same thing, then when you add that in or you take it out, then suddenly it's going to put them all in the right order and it's going to sort them properly. So what I say is, if you find your grades are out of order, two things you want to do. One is you want to temporarily change their name to be something else. Remember what issues those were, because we'll come back to that in a second. So, in this particular case, the guy had it was a new grading outfit down in Florida. I believe they're called EGS grading. He had a couple of books that he'd had them slab, and so they were EGS, 9.0s or something like that. Temporarily make them a CGC 9.0. Just remember which ones they were, because you're going to want to change it in a second. Then go ahead and go to the grading setups, highlight the EGS grading so it puts in the official run of EGS gradings, which will also come with their own official sorting group. And if you had ones that were there before, go ahead and then uncheck that again, because then it'll actually pull out all the EGS grades you had beforehand that weren't part of the official sorting group. And then if you finally, and I know this sounds twisted, check it one more time, it'll put the official group in again, except now they all come in with the official sort order. Now they're all created by the program. They weren't created by you, so we know where they go. And then take those two books you had and set them to be EGS 9.0s again, and then these things will be lovely and sorted. Granted, this is a very edge case. It mostly applies to people who've added their own grades before the official grades came along. What I'd say for most people is, if you have CBCS books or PGX books or things like that, instead of adding the grades yourself, easiest thing to do is just go to the grading setup, say, yeah, okay, I guess I use PGX grades. Boom. Check them off. They'll suddenly appear in the program, and you're good to go. And then that will take care of that. All right. I hope that it was somewhat helpful. It was a bit of a long trip to get there, and I appreciate you guys hanging with me. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for me. Nope, we got one here. Xanadu Comics asks, why is ComicBase listing beautiful stories for ugly children as unrecognized comics in my check updates? And it comes down to basically because we decided it wasn't a comic book. We decided it was a magazine. Even though it's comic-sized, the definition of comic, according to Scott McCloud et al., is you have to be telling a story, interposing the words and pictures in an integral way. So it's where you've got you don't just have an illustration next to a block of text. It isn't just about the paper stock it's printed on. It's that you're using a particular type of storytelling to get that across, and hopefully that is useful. And getting a flag on the play here. What do we got here? Actually, no, it's in books. Should it be in mags or books? That's actually a really good question. So the secondary thing, and I think I just put you into the stream. Apologize for that. But anyway, if the ruling on whether something is a magazine or a book, or versus a comic book. So a comic book is you're telling a story, using an interposition of words and pictures, integral in an integral way. If beyond that, it comes to the question of periodicity. So in other words, if you expected these to come out every month, or you expect them to come out every 2 months, or whatever the thing was, then they more properly belong in magazines. If they got put in books and they were put out with any kind of periodicity, which I swear is a word, then the editor screwed up and they should move them back. And I'll tell them that when I'm asking them about the pseudonyms. But no, they don't belong in comics anymore because of the particular style of how they told their stories. But if they're in books, then I'd want to at least have a quick, a hard look at the cover dates and see if there was any regularity to them. Because if there was, then they belong in magazines. And finally, I'll give one little kind of a sampler. We are going to be introducing a new media type soon, which is going to cut down, I think some of you folks will find this very welcome. I think it'll cut out a lot of what people consider some of the cruft. And that we're going to be pulling newspapers into their own type, and at which point we will automatically also move over anything that was a newspaper that was lumped in with magazines, because we didn't have something called a newspaper before, and so it had to be a magazine because it sure wasn't a book and it sure wasn't a comic. But we're going to be introducing that as a new media type in the future, at which point you can also say, yeah, I'm not really a newspaper guy. Don't bother giving me newspapers as updates, and then you won't need to worry about having that in your database and cluttering up your disk or space or whatever you want, and hopefully that will help, because it's we rolled with the punches as best we could under an absolute avalanche of data this last year, and it really took us by surprise how very much data we got given to us about some of these newspapers. Which, on one hand, I'm quite sympathetic to, because like I really did love. For instance, even though I don't collect them personally, I really did love looking at, say, all the covers of Time magazine and just getting a sense of history just by going down, just gliding down the covers, images of it, and just seeing, oh my goodness, was it, it was like the second or first or second issue of Time magazine was featuring, I believe, God, it wasn't. Otto von Hindenburg, which I believe was the World War One air marshal of Germany, before it was the Hindenburg. But I mean, I thought that stuff was really pretty cool. So even though my personal interest is more comic magazines or things like Saturday Evening Post or something like that, it was interesting seeing magazines. And I am also interested, when you say things like, well, how did the New York Times cover, the D-Day? How did the Chicago Tribune cover D-Day? I think that's cool, but it's not necessarily something that's a mainline collector interest of mine. And so I want to give people who do have that as their interest a way to store their data, but maybe I want to not clutter up my database as much with it. Certainly if there are people who feel that way, I certainly sympathize. So we are going to be breaking out the newspapers into their own category. The definition on that is going to be a primarily news-oriented periodical, typically printed on newsprint or very cheap stock, published more frequently than once a month. And if that's the case, then that is going to automatically get moved into newspapers, and you'll have a fourth media type, which at least is available to you, so you can get updates for it if you want. And honestly, if it's not of interest to you, you will not have as much data in your database, because you can just say, look, it's interesting to somebody, but it's not me. And so we want to have a way of slotting that in a way that makes maybe a little bit more sense. All right, well, that's, I think, about it for me. And I do have a couple things I will come back to the other things. Where will CBG go? It was newspaper for a long time, then switched to magazine. That is a really interesting question. And my guess, I mean, I'll have a talk over with the editors on that one. My guess is it probably belongs in newspapers, but let's talk about it, because when they switched to a more, I'm trying to remember how long they were at the end. I think they were still weekly. So I still think there's a case to say it was a newspaper, but yeah, let's talk it out. I mean, there's always going to be weird edge cases, so let's see where those belong. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for me. Thank you all for showing up on this one, and I'll try to get a little bit more sleep and and hopefully not be quite as strung out just in terms of like squinting with my eyes to see the screen next time out. Watch out for those Signet Classic. Mysteries. They're terrific. They were a great value, but man, they'll make you go blind. All right, guys. See you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.